This is football. I am Kevin Clark. Guys, Patrick Daugherty from NBC Sports joins me. Best and worst coaching hires. We rank them 1 through 6. 6 because the Saints job hasn't been filled as of time of recording. Mike McCarthy removed himself from a job he wasn't going to get. You're really going to, this was really funny. Like anytime RotoPat and I get together, we just kind of riff on things. We talk a little bit about, football, which is most of it. We also touch on St. Louis Rams offensive coordinators, which at some points to that tenure were barely football. The University of Maine hockey color scheme we get into a little bit. He didn't know what it was. I had to get into the weeds with him, a little college puck. But yeah, no, you're really going to enjoy this. Having said that, I want to talk a little bit about the Buddy Tevens documentary, The Buddy Way, that Omaha Productions produced. It is debuting on Wednesday, January 29th, which is today, the day we're recording this, on ESPN2. And I saw this last week. I could not have been more blown away by, first of all, how great the documentary was, how many people in football he touched and life he touched. I didn't know much about Buddy Tevens. Obviously, I followed his college career. I followed the fact that he basically revolutionized the way teams practiced about a decade ago, reading all about that. There were tons of stories, New York Times, other places like that. And then how much that influenced the NFL, obviously the entire Ivy League when he was the coach at Dartmouth, a bunch of stuff going on at college. Like he is, Roger Goodell gave a speech at the event I went to see this. And he said, he wanted to tell us about Buddy Tevens, who's one of the most influential coaches of all time. And I think when you see this documentary, you're going to understand why that is, why he was so influential. And it wasn't just, hey, we changed the way guys practiced. We're talking about a guy who just coached everybody in a really impressive manner. And Tony Pastores, who's one of the Rams executives, was a Buddy Tevens player at Dartmouth in the second tenure there. He had some really good insight. Like obviously Peyton Manning, Eli Manning are in it. A ton of faces you'll know. Roger Goodell, his wife. It was funny because I believe, and this was a good little Easter egg, is like I believe that Roger is named as like a Dartmouth parent. I don't think they ever identify him as the NFL commissioner, and I think that speaks to the reach that Buddy had. Is that someone like Roger Goodell, who was sounds like constant communication with Buddy, was just also a friend and just a parent of Dartmouth students who just admired Buddy Tevens. So it's a tragedy that he passed. The documentary is an amazing monument to his life. I recommend it. This is not me being a shill or anything. I truly thought it was an emotional experience that I think you guys are going to enjoy. Ladies and gentlemen, Patrick Daugherty. I want to read a quote to you.
Oh boy.
It is from Stephen Jones, co-owner, I guess you could say, of the Dallas Cowboys, son of Jerry Jones. They do, I tell you, the Jones family, they all look kind of close in age. But here's the deal. This is Jory Epstein, great reporter. She's been on the show before. Kind of a geriologist. Like she understands. It's really hard to understand what Jerry Jones is talking about.
It is. That's an expanding field. Many geriologists.
It is. But like, I think she was on this show and talking about how, like, the time that they got him for doodling. Remember that? Like, he actually had like 4 pages of doodles. Like, we barely scratched the surface.
Weren't they kind of good too?
They were kind of good. And it's like, like we got doodles for. It's like the end of Indiana Jones, the warehouse scene. Like, we just got warehouses full of Jerry Jones doodles. The other thing is, I've seen it before, but that afternoon was informative because he gave like 7 straight press conferences. Like literally, like he would just sit there and then it would peter out and then like a new group would come in and be like, oh, whatever. And then like even Tim Cowlishaw yesterday on Around the Horn when I was doing it, he was saying that like after the Schottenheimer press conference that he just like they went into breakout groups afterwards and did like they weren't done talking. Like everybody talked for like 90 minutes except Brian Schottenheimer, who's the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys. Anyway, here's the quote. All right, so Jory says, hey, Steven, Devil's Advocate says Schotty hasn't called plays since 2020 and hasn't demonstrated a modern offense. What gives Cowboys confidence? Here's the quote. Andy Reid, long dash. Wow, what a career. But, He's a guy who did it differently in Philadelphia, and he's evolved.
It's an answer. They did answer the question, I guess, with words, not necessarily with answers. He answered with words, not necessarily with answers.
So, trying to parse this, is he trying to compare Brian Schottenheimer and the last few years of Brian Schottenheimer to Philadelphia Andy Reid, one of the most winning coaches in the history of that conference? Is that correct?
Yes. I think he's really, really stretching everyone's got a different path.
Everyone changes. Some people go to a Super Bowl and make multiple NFC title games.
NFC championship games, yes.
And create great offenses, create winning cultures. Some of them do that. Some of them underachieve with the Seahawks, lose a bunch of jobs.
Some of them help get the Rams moved. Like his job in St. Louis. Many people forget the 2012 to 14 shoddy St. Louis era, where he was laser focused on ensuring there would be no hiccups.
The major league, the major league. Yes. He was the Lou Brown.
He was laser focused.
Who was the guy after Frank Signetti? Was that his name? No, not. Yeah,
for the Rams.
Yeah, who was the OC that Jeff Fisher had? Where everybody was like, "Well, he's given up." He had a guy.
I don't even remember who followed Shoddy. There was one guy in 2015. Shoddy was the 2014. And Signetti does ring a bell, actually. Listen, 2015 Rams don't leave much of an impression on the memory.
Yeah, he was the the quarterback coach in 2012 and 2014. He was the OC of the Rams. He is now out of football. Most recently, he was the O coordinator for the University of Pittsburgh. Lost that job 2 years ago.
I always love when you go to the Wikipedia and it's still, I just ran into this recently with David Culley, maybe while I was doing research for this show, and it still puts him in the present tense, says, is an American pro football coach, but then there's nothing on his coaching box.
Did he just ghost after the Houston debacle?
He did. He just pieced out. He kind of like he did the Will Fuller, where he didn't officially retire. He just left. It's just assumed. So the Wikipedia, Will Fuller's Wikipedia will remain in present tense.
Someone told me recently, and I don't know if he ever made it official, but in Green Bay, BJ Raji, it was totally baffling. Just one day he just wasn't there anymore.
Yes.
And they were just where's BJ? And they're like, I don't know. And no one's heard from him since. He just literally just left the sport of football. Which I got to tell you, in sports media, I would be texting you in 2 years if I got out of the game.
Yeah, you would. You'd see a good graphic and you'd text me.
I would text you.
You'd see that. You'd see
I would keep in touch with everybody else in sports media except for you when I take my job.
The very first Bleacher Report Mike Norville fired graphic you saw, you would have to text me immediately.
When I take my job with the federal government a couple weeks from now. All right, so here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna rank the coaches 1 through 6. As of now, we're recording this at 12:18 on Wednesday. The Saints don't have a coach. Mike McCarthy removed himself from consideration for the Saints job. Now, Nick Underhill tweeted that there was no interview. There was nothing scheduled. They were supposed to talk this week. Didn't get a chance to. McCarthy removes himself. Do you or do you not love removing yourself from consideration for jobs you did not interview with and that you didn't have something scheduled? You didn't have a Zoom. You didn't have you didn't literally had nothing on the calendar. Mike McCarthy's Google Calendar, completely free. But he said, you know what? I'm tired of it. I'm focused on 2026.
Yeah, no, that's that's major self-possession energy. You know what? I don't have time for this negativity. I don't have time to wait around. I'm not working on anyone else's time. I've been working on Jerry Jones's time for 5 or 6 years. I need a break. And it's not accurate, by the way. Mike McCarthy had nothing on his calendar. I've been Zooming with Mike McCarthy.
I was going to say, PFF's about to get a client.
Exactly. I was teaching him how to use Ben Baldwin's website. And listen, I don't know if this will get you in trouble. I shared my ESPN Plus login with him.
No.
So he can read Walder's stuff.
Walder and Barnwell.
Yeah, Walder and Barnwell. And so he got a taste at the PFF, that he read for 1 or 2 days in 2019 or whatever. But
just don't let him read Solak.
No.
Because McCarthy's going to say Solak didn't play the game and get everybody upset.
No, McCarthy is going to see it, and he's going to be one of the Solak defenders. Yeah, obviously, you should have just popped it out there.
I'm a Solak defender. Here's my Solak take. I don't even agree with basically anything he said. He's a very valued colleague of mine. I don't agree with what Solak says, but I'll defend his right to say it
for sure.
I am such a huge fan of people who get people really agitated and upset, and Solak doing that with just that tweet, just the wording, because the take wasn't that wild, because it sounds like Kurt Warner kind of agreed with
Warner
it, like in a roundabout way. A couple other people were talking about the protection, so the take wasn't bad. It was the wording. It was the capitalized no idea. But you need the no idea to make people as upset as possible, and that is the secret sauce. And I have undying respect for Ben Solak on that.
My only two criticisms for Ben: one's a writing, not a take. I feel like it needed to be the no that was all capitalized, not the idea that was all caps.
Yeah, that's true.
I feel like the no should have been all caps. And my take on the play, again, Kurt Warner defended him. I feel like it would have only been possible, though, if Josh Allen had like access to Matrix bullet time.
Yeah, but he
could
should.
like unhinge his hit.
That's called the clutch gene, buddy.
That's true, actually.
No, we love Ben here.
That's true.
I actually do agree. I do agree with Ryan Leaf that Solak should post his address.
Ryan Leaf,
yeah,
Ryan Leaf was out there tweeting like an Ohio State fan after they fell down 7-3 in the first quarter. Well, Ryan Leaf took this a step further. He was actually saying Ben Solak needed to post Ryan Day's address. I have no idea why. It didn't really make sense. But
did some guy in New York harass Ryan Day on the street the other day? Some Michigan fan. I think I saw a video on that. Is Ryan Day? What is it about Ryan Day that drives people so crazy? Is it the beard dye?
It has to be. The beard is so unnaturally black that maybe there's pheromones or chemicals in the beard that trigger like an actual physical reaction. But he is like Ryan Day. It's like he's like walking down the street in like 1862 New York and gets challenged to a duel like once a block. It is really, really weird, the reactions he provokes in people.
I don't know what it is. College football, there's just such a derangement. That's why I love it. All right. My son went to the Syracuse Miami game, and all of the photos are like amazing. Like he's so mesmerized by the Carrier Dome and all this stuff. And every time, I've literally 100 photos on my phone, and they pop up all the time, like the corner of the memories thing. And I literally have to explain. People are like, that's such a cute photo, and I go, that was the worst day of my life. You just have to trust me. That
well,
beautiful
the worst day of your life too.
two-year-old.
You said you didn't even get heckled.
Yeah, no, that's true. I was surprised at how. I think it may be a Southern thing that when you see an opposing fan at their lowest moment, to say the worst thing you can possibly say to them.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a Syracuse thing.
I realized what it was. The Syracuse guy, they would have had no trouble ragging on some other public figures. They see Kevin Clark, the quick calculus in their head, all of them are journalism majors. The quick calculus in their head is, ESPN, don't say anything. Yeah. He might get me a job at some point.
Yeah, some people said, one guy actually said, I love your work, as I was rushing out.
You don't want to hear that.
And you know what? I'm not going to lie. Thank you, buddy. Thank you for the words. I'm just like, what the hell? This is the worst one of my life. That was actually the worst one of my life, when some guy said he liked my work in the Carrier Dome at that moment. That was rock bottom for me.
That's games.
All right. Let's do the rankings. All right, your number one coach of this cycle is who?
I mean, I wish I could be contrary, but it's Ben Johnson. He was the big fish all along. I wish I could say Pete Carroll. I'm not going to say Pete, despite being a huge Pete fan.
I don't have either of those. But go ahead.
All right. Time out.
No, I'm not. Listen, I'm not getting ahead of myself. You have the floor.
We can pretend there are things more important than the coach-quarterback relationship. But that's only if you don't have a QB worth forming a relationship with. So if you have a guy, who's like clearly not a franchise quarterback, clearly not going to be here in 5 years, whatever, then focus on the defense. Focus on being a leader or whatever, quote unquote. But when you have a QB actually worth forming a relationship with, the only thing that matters is making sure the head coach can actually do it. The Bears had one primary objective, and that was to find the guy who can build a relationship with Caleb. Best possible outcome. So I think that was the only thing that mattered for the Bears, was get the guy who can, quote unquote, fix Caleb, enhance Caleb, take Caleb to the next level. So they did that. Just on a pure resume level, so we've gotten kind of used to being like, talk about Wikipedia, is like, this guy's only 34 and He's only been calling plays for like 18 months.
Yeah.
Like I don't know if I'd be hiring this guy. But Ben Johnson's only 38, but he is a dues payer. He spent 4 years for Dan Campbell. And also, not only is he a dues payer, like he has seen darkness. He coached for Joe Philbin and Adam Gase. So he also knows like what not to do, but he didn't like leave. Long stint in Miami, pretty long stint in Detroit as far as these things go. He's not a job hopper. He got the Bears. I'm sure you've heard this narrative. This is such a Kevin Clark narrative. He got the Bears to do a private jet. They had never once done a private jet.
I literally not heard that.
This is I know a Bears.
Well, also it's like a 20-minute flight from Detroit. It's like across the Great Lake. Even though it's a surprisingly long drive. Yeah. It's a surprisingly long drive because of the lake.
He could have driven, but that would have been time to prep for the interview. So that's actually a good time to have a long drive. But this is per the dad at school pickup, by the way, who's a Bears fan. This is where I got this nugget from. He said the Bears had never sent a private jet to.
Yeah, but maybe after last year when Dan Quinn flew commercial, maybe that's the new inefficiency. Is you get the guy. True. Wasn't there an old Bill Parcells trick where he didn't send the limo for the free agent to see if he'd complain?
That's true. Yes, I've heard that. I think I've heard that from you. Actually,
I think it might be fake.
The Bears private jet thing clearly fake, by the way. Too. I didn't fact check that one. No. He's a dues payer. He fits the current mold though. But yeah, he actually has a resume, and he's the primary the Bears, they know they're not going anywhere if Caleb's not going anywhere. Like the whole next 3 to 4 years of Bears history are just solely about that player. Get the guy who's best equipped to do that. And they did that with Ben Johnson.
All right. My number one is Mike Vrabel.
He's my number two.
Wow, Pete Carroll's lower. You wanted to go Pete Carroll, and then you just didn't even.
We'll get to Pete in a minute. All right. I love Pete. We'll get to Pete in a minute.
I'm going to talk about Vrabel before I get to talk about Ben Johnson. I'm actually going to take these one by one. Otherwise, it's going to be chaos. Vrabel should have been the coach last year. The reason he wasn't was because they hired Gerard Mayo as some sort of coach in waiting. Mike Vrabel is a much better coach than Gerard Mayo. We now have the data to prove this. We've seen Gerard Mayo. I feel bad. I don't think anybody should ever go one and done except Freddie Kitchens. Freddie Kitchens should have been one and done. But everybody else, I just think they should get a longer runway.
Even Culley deserved a second year, to be frank.
Well, also, they hired Lovie Smith after that, and they fired him. So what was the point? What was the point of any of that? What was the point of the Texans for 5 years?
Listen, it was post-COVID. People were trying to refine their foot. Like, they weren't working from home anymore, the Texans, and they were. I got
killed. I got killed by Texans fans. Remember they interviewed Josh McCown for the Culley job? I do. And I said they should just hire Josh McCown. Who cares? And I was right.
Yep. But the Josh McCown pushback. Listen, I think there was a lot of pushback. I can't even get some of it. I won't even get into it on air. Actually, there was some weird pushback to the McCown thing.
Well, it was because he never coached before.
He never coached before. I think there was a perception.
No, but the problem
in Houston.
But David Culley had coached before, and that was that problem. That was a separate problem. We had a lot of data on David Culley, and then he did coach, and then he got fired. Didn't he have what was the inexplicable time management thing he had to apologize for? He didn't take a time. Something like they literally cost him a game, and he was like, "Yeah, I didn't do anything wrong." And the next day, he was like, "That's on me. I lost the game." I honestly forget what it is.
The Culley era, unfortunately, immediately fell out of my head. It's one of the things.
What about the Lovie Smith era?
Lovie, how could you forget what Lovie did? 2 back-to-back 4th down conversions, like proven on the way out the door. Like, oh, you think I'm the problem? How about I just instantly win and cost you the number 1 pick? Huh?
All right, can I get back to Vrabel? Vrabel led a very mediocre Titans team to the number 1 seed. Despite football media deciding that the Titans were not the number 1 seed, they literally were the number 1 seed that year. They made an AFC title game at one point in a separate year.
Insane resume.
What's that?
Insane resume.
Insane resume. He won games he wasn't supposed to, which is the definition. Like, I always think, and this is like more of a college take, but the only guys who really are home run hires in college are the guys who reliably beat teams they weren't supposed to beat, right? So like you look at Urban Meyer at Utah, like he was he should not have been beating these teams. He should not have been beating these teams, and he was. And like that's like the old thing about like Alex Ferguson, the soccer manager, was like beating Real Madrid with some Aberdeen or something. It's like that's those are the dudes. Like, because you think like, all right, well, if I'm trying to think of, like, not to pick on Ryan Day, but if Ryan Day went to,
you can say it, Mizzou.
Yeah,
you can say it.
No, but if he went to Army right now, would he win as much as Jeff Monken?
Probably the exact same. Yeah.
I don't think so.
He'd go 7-5 at Army.
Jeff Monken went like 10-2 this year, or some crap like that.
Yeah, right,
12-2 maybe. I met him the other night. I said beat Navy to him. It felt very patriotic.
You felt enlisted?
Well, that's his big thing. He says, yeah, he also said beat Navy, and I said beat Navy back to him. It was great. It was the conversation had a lot of juice. Vrabel, to me, is going to legitimize. So my number one is Vrabel. My number two is Pete Carroll, because both of them, A, have a track record. I know what they're going to do, but B, they saw. My ranking is like, what problem are you solving? And I know that the Patriots are about to be a lot better than they used to be. I know that the Raiders are going to be a lot better than they used to be, because both those teams were rock bottom last year. And part of that was the quarterback in Vegas. But I know that they're going to instantly add 3, 4, 5 wins. And now the ceiling might be lower, especially with the Raiders. But my take on it is like, the Seahawks got tired of Pete Carroll winning double-digit games and like losing in the first round. The Raiders, like, if the Raiders win 10 games, they're going to build a statue of him in Vegas.
Yes.
They're going to build a statue of him at one of the weird resorts, like Circus Circus.
Yes.
Not like not like the Aria,
no.
but like Circus Circus or
New York.
Rio.
Yeah.
The Rio. Is that still
Rio's
open?
I have no idea.
Okay. Well, if it's not, it'd be a great place for a huge Pete Carroll statue after they win 10 games next year. So I spoiled my number two, but I'm just saying, like, I know what these guys are going to give me. I understand why you wouldn't hire these guys to be the Bears coach, because you need a quarterback-driven coach, and those only come via current OCs. There was no genius offensive coach sitting around waiting to be hired. But I want stability. If I'm these teams, I want just like professionalize it, to like know what a team should look like. And like with Vrabel, I think I've been around very few people who connect with players more. And like I did a big piece on it a couple of years ago. Like, he just understands how a locker room should work. He understands just like how fundamentals should work and how like players should play. And I know that sounds stupid, but I think the things we judge a coach on is really like 3% of coaching. It's like game management, and then like, it's like timeouts, and like, did you have a good play on third down in the Super Bowl, right? Like that's really like what we judge it on.
And most of the good coaches still don't even have those things.
You have neither of those things.
Yeah.
0 for 2.
Yeah.
But for me, I think like 92% of football is like August 6th. What are you telling your offensive line to do? Like, what are you installing? Like, remember Jim Zorn famously did not install his offense in training camp?
Yes.
Like,
yes, I do. Seemed like a missed opportunity.
Didn't Jeff Jagodzinski, remember that guy? Didn't he not? Oh no, was it Todd Monken who got play calling stripped of him? It was a Tampa Bay OC.
Familiar.
It was a Tampa Bay OC, because it's the same thing. Like they just weren't getting there. Like I honestly don't want to besmirch whoever it was, whoever it wasn't rather. But it was a Tampa Bay OC where like they didn't have a playbook. They just kind of like they were just like, stick with me here, stick with me. And so like literally like sometimes we overlook that kind of thing, and you're just not gonna get that with these guys. They're gonna know how to build a football team, how to just get the fundamentals right, the nuts and bolts, which I think 20 NFL teams, like it's the old Belichick thing, like Jimmy Johnson stole Belichick, 24 teams are going to get out of your way. Like, stop being one of those 24 teams. Hire Mike Vrabel, hire Pete Carroll.
The Vrabel, too. I feel like the things he got criticized in Tennessee were almost his strengths. He would overachieve, so they only won a playoff game in 1 year. They won 2, but they only won a playoff game one season. It's because they made the playoffs 2 more times. It's like, enormous overachievers. Like, should not have been there with that roster. Should not have been
Well,
there with Ryan Tannehill.
And Pete Carroll, it's like you built the best modern defense and found a franchise quarterback in the third round. How dare you only win one Super Bowl?
I have some Pete Carroll thoughts too. I'll share them. But like too, Vrabel too. He's a great fit in New England because you know, he loves schemes. He loves side quests. He loves loopholes. Like perfect Belichick descendant in that regard. You remember in the playoff game where they beat Bill Belichick and the Patriots, and he basically had Belichick like stomping around in fury.
Yeah,
because he remembered
he drained like 2 minutes off the clock.
It was some clock loophole with penalties or what was it?
It was a false start. It was delays of games, then false start. What is the plural of delay of games or delays of game?
I think it'd be delays.
Delays of game. Yep. And then they took a false start. And the booth, I actually watched that not too long ago. The booth knew what he was doing, and they're like, "Here comes the false start." That's how you know you're peaking. And you know who else knew what was going to happen? Bill Belichick. I bet Bill Belichick was like, "I know exactly what he's doing and how he's going to do this."
And he was furious.
Punt. Oh yeah,
he was furious.
I think so. I actually watched it. Belichick was working the refs, but I think he knew, so he was just trying to see if the refs knew.
Yeah, that's probably a good point actually. Because I'm not saying that Bill didn't know, but he was like super mad that someone else knew.
I think he was just trying to bully the refs into stopping the clock.
Yeah, that should have worked. If I were the refs, I don't care what the rules are. I stopped the clock. And
my favorite thing about football refereeing is how many times the clock stops or doesn't stop, and there's no explanation for it. And then like the pool report is like, the clock didn't stop because of an operational error, and it's like the coach just got fired. Like who was it? Kirk Cousins who said like, "There's no, it's unfortunate that like there's just no consideration whatsoever of like calls or any of the stuff when everybody gets fired and cut in March." It's like, oh well, oops.
Yeah, it's a big oopsie. Vrabel, by the way, I will say, I am interested in like the Vrabel versus McDaniels like energy, and because. If Vrabel should just run his Titans offense, man. Like if you thought like Ryan Tannehill was good effective on bootlegs and play action, like let me give you Drake May. Like they should just do a shot for shot remake of the Arthur Smith offense. To be honest,
I was gonna say should they bring back Matt LaFleur?
Yeah, just do a shot for shot remake of that. But we know that's not happening.
Right.
Josh McDaniels has come in now and have like like the biggest playbook in the history of the NFL and all this and. I do worry about the ego and the butting heads there.
How close, if we have the doomsday clock, how close are we to Josh McDaniels getting another NFL job for a year and a half?
Oh man, it's gonna be very, very close. Anytime you think a guy can't possibly get hired again, they do get hired again. So yeah.
All right. Who's your number? Wait, do you want to do your Pete Carroll?
I'll do my Pete Carroll. He was fourth.
Wait, who's third?
Aaron Glenn.
Okay. All right. So let's back up here. So you do Aaron Glenn, and I'll do Ben Johnson.
All right. So retreads are not inherently bad. I'm not one of those people who believes like should never hire a retread. But new blood does tend to work better than old blood. And Aaron Glenn is he's one of the best first-time head coaching candidates I thought was out there. And, he didn't have a good 2024 defense. We know that, but it was beyond his control. They were kind of cooking before the injuries too. The Lions had the championship formula. It was the explosive offense, like game-changing plays on defense. It's just such a shame what happened there. But kind of similar to Ben Johnson, Aaron Glenn has a really strong, methodical resume. It was 5 years for Sean Payton, 4 years for Dan Campbell. So he paid his dues, as we like to say. He meets the Jets' needs because the Jets, they're not solving quarterback probably overnight. He's lauded for his leadership. So he's going to come in. He's going to immediately like reset the culture or whatever, like take command, be a leader, bring stability. And so the Jets, their strength right now is defense. So like I said, the Bears, the only thing that mattered was finding the guy who could work with Caleb. The Jets, they don't have that guy who matters right now. So I think it's kind of smart to strengthen their strength, bring in the defensive-minded guy. So you're not chasing your tail on offense. Just have him settle the defense, try to make the really good defensive talent just a really good unit again. And so like they don't have the quarterbacks. What are the next two things? Leadership and defense. Aaron Glenn provides that. Again, two really, really strong head coaches he's worked under. And I just really like the Aaron Glenn hire for the Jets.
I love the Aaron Glenn hire. He's number 4 for me. Only because he hasn't done it. We have no idea. It's gonna be the cousin of my Ben Johnson take. Like I basically have Aaron Glenn and Ben Johnson 3A and 3B, and then I think you probably guess who 5 and 6 are.
Yes.
But so with Glenn, I've already done my Glenn spiel. Like I think he's the closest thing you're going to get to the Jan Campbell experience. I think he's have instant credibility. He's what the Jets need. He's not, and you saw from the press conference, he's not going to like get bullied by the New York media.
No.
You should not. You should be excited to meet with the New York media.
Yes.
But you can also, and I said this for Schrager last week, you can mold them in your image. You can get them on the bandwagon really easily.
Grind some Rex Ryan.
The New York media want to be homers.
Yes, they do.
They just cannot because the team is bad. The one thing I think gets lost in media coverage is the beats want to be homers. And if you give them nothing but losses, they can't do that.
No.
Okay? And I'm not saying like they're rooting for the team. I'm saying I don't think people get that when there's a legitimate dynasty, the local media gets book deals, they get national TV appearances, their kids get put through college. Like it
Brian
is
Windhorst
so much better to cover a winning team. And so the conspiracy theory that the local media is rooting against a team is never correct.
No.
It is. Do you know how much extra income a good Jets team would make the local New York media? That's like the Cowboys thing, where people are like, oh, media hates the Cowboys. The Cowboys are a stimulus check to the industry when they win one game. The following Monday, everything explodes. Everything explodes. They beat the Saints on Sunday at 1 p.m. and everything is lifted. And this idea that like, oh, the local media hates the team. No, they don't. If anything, they're frustrated because the team and the incompetence is standing in the way of national relevance for local media.
The second the New York Knicks get one game over 500, the entire press corps immediately becomes like John Kennedy's cabinet, like so fired up about the future of America and like just like want to get to work, like fresh out of college, like so much youthful energy. So I totally buy your take, especially in New York. Like they do not want these teams to be bad. You see it with literally the second the Knicks win like 2 games in a row, they're like, this might finally be it. This might be it, guys.
People are like, oh, the Mets beat hates it. What?
That might be true.
That might be true. No, that might be true. No, I don't know. I don't know any of the Mets guys.
There's
I just know that like a good Mets team. The other thing is like I remember, and I don't even know if this is true anymore. I know an Islanders fan who said the actual like most dormant, annoying fan base is the Islanders because there's all these guys who jumped on the bandwagon in the 70s. And this guy was telling me he's from Long Island, and he was like, one of these days when the Islanders get back to a cup final, it's just you're gonna be stunned at like the amount. But like Mets, it's like there's all these folks, any New York team, Jets, Mets, Yankees, whatever. There's just a dormant fan base. Even if you think it's a huge fan base, which most of them have, there's still like 10% they unlock when they're good. Whatever. That's my New York media rant of the day. I'm gonna do Ben Johnson 3. I'm gonna do my rant now. Not my rant. I'm done. If you haven't done it before, like I'm just ranking like likelihood that this is gonna work. It's a different job. Offensive coordinator, different job from head coach. I'm not breaking new ground. That's not an interesting insight. I promise you that's not the totality of my take. There have been a lot of genius head coaches, coordinators, where it just doesn't work.
Nope.
It just doesn't work. And a couple things. Number one, oftentimes, who is supposed to be... So this is a McVay. I'm going to do a McVay-Shanahan take here for a second. I think a lot of times, who is supposed to be a good coach in a certain tree is typically shaded by a handful of media figures, and it's kind of on half-baked information.
Yes.
Like, best example I can give is I thought I don't think this anymore, but like John DeFilippo was awesome at explaining the Eagles' offense in 2017, the Nick
Zoomers
Foles
will
year,
not remember.
and like Frank Reich wasn't, and Doug Peterson definitely wasn't.
No.
And Doug Peterson's communication style just you watch him in press conferences and you're just like, I don't know if this is the guy. Turns out it was the guy. He was the guy. But John DeFilippo was who was the guy then?
I was going to get into this rant. If Kellen Moore had gotten hired, which he is going to get hired, I feel like the Eagles. They're the one true system franchise. I think you shouldn't say
but the way they simplified the offense, like somebody came up, they shut down. Like they had the bias. They just did another training camp and they just installed a new offense, which essentially was like Chip Kelly's offense with Nick Foles. That's neither here nor there. But anyway, like a lot of times, what happens, like who's going to be a good coach and not? It's like I talked to this guy once and he was great, and I'm going to put that tweet out, and then because there's no other information, that becomes the gospel, right? And this is not. I'm not talking about Ben Johnson. I'm talking about the McVay Shanahan guys. So like Matt LaFleur, there was a ton of skepticism because in the media, nobody was like, I know Matt LaFleur. He's a stud. There was none of that. There was none of that. And there was a lot of skepticism, and he's awesome at his job. He's phenomenal. I remember people scratching their heads. Maybe I was even doing it. And maybe I was still right, but Kevin O'Connell. Why would you pass on Jim Harbaugh for Kevin O'Connell? There's been no buzz about Kevin O'Connell. Buzz doesn't really get you anywhere.
No.
Get you a job. Okay. So this is all a Shanahan McVay thing. I'm talking about that tree. Right. And like we've seen Adam Gase fail before. Like we've seen this before. With Ben, I think about Kyle Shanahan, who was kind of the one guy where the proof of concept was so high, you knew the offense was going to be really good, and he's had a lot of success. Like Kyle is the one. By the way, McVay, Zoomers would never understand. Not a ton of hype about him. People were like, "What? He's getting an interview? Okay." Like they knew he was good, but it wasn't like he wasn't Kyle Shanahan level. He wasn't Ben Johnson level. He just came out of. He came out of. I had interviewed him one time. I thought he was good, but like
the hype immediately began once he was hired, but there was not a drumbeat for him.
Nobody thought he was getting that job.
Yeah.
Anyway, so to me, growing pains. Ben Johnson's gonna have a worse offensive line by virtue of the fact that he had the best offensive line as of last week. We'll see what the fit is with Caleb. Caleb's gonna get better. He's gonna have a higher floor because of this. But I'm saying he's probably gonna succeed. All I'm saying is I'm ranking him below only two guys, who have done it before and are going to raise their franchise's floor to a dramatic degree. And those fan bases should be very happy right now. The Bears should be happy because we talked about this earlier, they never get this guy.
No.
They're always hiring John Fox. They're always hiring Mark Trestman. This is a home run for them. Likelihood it works, high, but lower than what I envisioned for Pete Carroll and the Raiders. Different standards. Like Ben Johnson's goal, like if you get 2.5 beers in Pete Carroll, and you're like, Pete, you gonna win a Super Bowl here, bud? In Vegas? He's gonna be like, come on, man. Come on.
Pete, he's an eternal
chewing gum.
optimist,
Can you chew gum and drink?
Yes, probably.
Drink Allagash White all at the same time.
Yeah.
I don't know if drinks Allagash White. I just made that up. The Super Bowl is the ultimate goal if you're the Bears because you have Caleb Williams and you have Ben Johnson and all that stuff. Vrabel, the Super Bowl is the ultimate goal like 5 years from now. They just need to add talent. It's different standards, but I'm just, if I'm judging based on expectations, all that stuff, I'm putting Ben Johnson third.
Well, so I agree with a lot of your points. I think Aaron Glenn honestly has a higher floor than Ben Johnson because
I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that because you just know there's going to be good offensive plays.
You do? Okay, here's one take, though, I keep kind of unholstering. Is I think Ben Johnson is getting a little stolen Dan Campbell valor, where I still like to point out the Lions'
offensive coach.
He's an offensive coach, and
he looks like a defensive coach, and that helps Ben Johnson.
And their turnaround began when he fired Anthony Lynn, and he called plays for half a season. And the mentality is from Dan Campbell. The mentality is not from Ben Johnson. All the cool plays and designs are from Ben Johnson. But I think people might be surprised just how much of the Lions' offensive success is Dan Campbell and not just Ben Johnson. So I think that's a potential concern. The main concern for me with Ben Johnson is there are like mega Josh McDaniels vibes. Where like I feel like he definitely thinks he's like the Dark Lord of offense, and like he was very picky. Like Jaden Daniels, I don't need this job. I feel like he's got an extreme level of self belief, which of course you need to have to succeed in this world, that NFL world. But I feel like he's got a lot of very high regard of himself, and I think the catastrophe potential is kind of high with Ben Johnson. But I also just think there's a chance that he is like the best non-Shanny play caller in the NFL. And
I agree with you, but what I'll say is the catastrophe level of any coach hiring is high. And if they haven't done it before, it's extremely high. But that's not unique to Ben Johnson. Like, that's...
Yeah.
It's just hard. There's no such thing as a sure assistant coach.
No.
A sure thing.
No.
There's no such thing. I know I do my whole thing. There's no such thing as a quarterback prospect stolen from. There's no such thing as a pitching prospect. There's almost no such thing as a coaching prospect. The only thing you can ensure is what I said earlier. Is like there's going to be cool plays.
Yeah.
You know,
maybe too cool.
We'll see what the offensive line if they can hold up. All right, we probably had the same 5 and 6.
Let me give you my Pete take really quick.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's all right because I had Pete 4th. So first, it's just kind of like what is Pete supposed to do here? You know, in this division with this quarterback situation. So listen, they don't have the quarterback. They are not going to have the quarterback, which then I think greatly enhances like the importance of the assistants. Like he's someone who does need a Ben Johnson, and Pete Carroll, despite being one of the greatest American football coaches of all time. Like when was the last time Pete Carroll hired a good assistant? I think it was literally Dan Quinn. I went through his defensive and offensive coordinators, and like he struck out like time after time.
Didn't he have Dave Canales on staff at one point?
Maybe I think on staff, yes, as quarterbacks coach for Gino, but he wasn't the play caller. I guess I have to give him credit for Canales, but he had some real bad OCs and DCs.
I remember.
He has not had a superstar coordinator since Dan Quinn, and I think the assistants are going to be so important in Vegas because you don't have the quarterback. It's the Shark division. And but Pete Carroll, he's so much like Jim Harbaugh, and that Pete Carroll sets the tone on both sides of the ball. He's the identity of the team. He's a fundamentals coach. So I do think he's almost now basically going to be the Mike Tomlin of the West. I mean, I guess I was already the Mike Tomlin of the West. We're like, you're not winning fewer than 8 or 9 games, but can you win more than 10 games? I just don't really know what Pete is supposed to do in this situation. I mean, what he's supposed to do is establish some credibility, get kind of reset. I think he's more of like a reset the franchise hire.
Yeah.
And he's basically for who comes next is I think what the Pete Carroll hire is all about.
I'm going to argue something. So I was about to say, is he the guy before the guy? But the Raiders have had no sustained success for 40 years.
No.
They've never done 2 good things in a row.
Zoomers won't understand. Millennials won't understand. Gen Xers might kind of understand.
Boomers get it.
Boomers get it.
They all live in $3 million houses, and they get it about the Raiders.
And they remember John Madden on the sidelines.
They remember John Madden. Yep. So the thing about it is that there's only this. I don't think there's any resetting of the franchise. I think they're going to win double-digit games a couple times with Pete Carroll. And then they're going to make another bad decision in 4 years.
That's probably true.
And that's it. There's nothing beyond it. I don't think, maybe with Brady, but who knows? I'm not really clear on what Brady's job is going to be in 4 years. Is it going to be team president of the Raiders? Is it going to be part-time advisor / owner to the Raiders? Is he going to be a broadcaster? More power to him. I have multiple income streams. And very similar, I'd say, to Brady, which is $37 million a year just from Fox.
Yep.
That's about right. What me? And
that's
so,
similar to you.
Yeah. And so I understand. I'm just I think it's just Pete Carroll. I'm not even looking beyond that. He's resetting the franchise for himself.
I feel like he's resetting them as not a joke. It's not
right.
a joke.
But then they could easily go back to being a joke.
That's true. I will say
after.
Mark Davis's heart has seemed to be in the right place where I don't think the process was necessarily bad with Josh McDaniels. I would have never in a million years hired Josh McDaniels. I couldn't unsee what he did with the Broncos. I couldn't unsee what he did for a year with the Rams in St. Louis. But, no one condemned that hire.
You are a single issue voter.
I am.
How did you do as an assistant with the St. Louis Rams?
For Steve Spagnuolo? By the way, do you know Steve Spagnuolo is the third most recent coach of the Rams? How insane is that? But yeah,
third most recent. So before Jeff Fisher.
Before
that.
Well, if you don't count Fossil did one game.
All right.
It was McVay, Fisher, and Spags.
And then before that was Scott Linehan.
It was Mr. Linehan. That is correct.
Do you have vivid Scott Linehan memories?
No. That's the thing. The whole era, they were in their major league era. I don't really know what else to call it. It all bleeds together. After Mike Martz, there's essentially the paragraph for the St. Louis Rams after Mike Martz. It can be one paragraph on Wikipedia, 2 to 3 sentences. It all blended together. There was no difference between good and bad St. Louis Rams things. Those final
all right. I assume Liam Coen is a number 5.
He is.
I gotta say, stop judging off of press conferences.
No,
Nick Sirianni had a bad press conference.
Even Campbell kind of
Dan
did.
Campbell got pilloried after his press conference. Nobody said these guys have to have social skills.
No. The press conference, I will say, I do file the press conference away still. Even though it hasn't been a good indicator, I still do file, all right, bad press conference. I still make a note of that. Just a few scattered Liam Coen thoughts. How many times does this guy need to take the Kentucky offensive coordinator job before he's sure if it's for him or not?
He might still take it. I mean, it's only January 29th. He might go back.
I'm not sure if I love my new head coach. He was basically climbing out the bathroom window when he took our job. Like, I'm not sure if I like that. Just not really sure about the character with Liam Coen. And the guy, unlike Ben Johnson, unlike Aaron Glenn, like, this guy was the main offensive coordinator as recently as 7 years ago. So he hasn't really been an NFL dues payer. He's kind of out of nowhere. And just the one other thing, I talked about stolen Dan Campbell valor. I just feel like maybe one member of the media, could be you, could be me, should write an article that's like, why do all of Baker Mayfield's offensive coordinators keep getting head coaching jobs?
Yeah. Do they think he sucks?
Yeah,
Does the NFL think he sucks?
I think they do still.
It's like Brian Callahan was on the show in the spring and was like, Jake Browning texted him after Callahan got the Titans job and literally was joking, but was like, am I really that bad?
Apparently. Yeah.
Wow. We gotta hire this guy. He's making Browning look like a competent quarterback. Wow. So, it's like Baker's good.
He's very good, apparently. And so, like, Ben Johnson, I think, is getting more of the heat. Like, this guy's just a play caller.
Yeah.
Like, whereas, like, Liam Coen is the real Johnny come lately of this. Like, it could work. Sometimes guys rise fast for a reason, but wow, like, this guy has been rising like exponentially. Yeah. And he got the Sean McVay boost, and then maybe he got the Baker boost, and maybe he's not even that good of a coordinator, let alone head coach.
I think he'll be fine. I think he's going to be better than. I think getting Balky out did more for the Jaguars franchise than Doug Peterson ever did. Doug Peterson conceivably could have won a power struggle like 2 years ago with Trent Balky, and like the fact that he didn't do it is an unforced error.
Pre-winning a power struggle is a good sign for Liam, by the way.
Completely agree. I don't understand. I have 2 takes here. I don't understand the crashing out the fan bases have done, and the Lions did it too, about offensive coordinators leaving. Like, with Coen in particular, sorry, the job changed in Tampa. He decided to be the highest paid offensive coordinator because the other option was working for Trent Baalke. And then they fired Trent Baalke for him, and it sounded like he had to be a little underhanded about it. But I'm not. If you got rid of the shady coaches, we would have no coaches. It'd be like the leftovers. It would just
really
be like, hey, where'd that guy go? Where'd Urban Meyer go?
That's a really good point.
Wasn't he just on TV? Why is there an empty chair on Fox?
Why does he get to call every Ohio State game?
So, I'm not offended by any of this stuff. Quick take. University of Maine, I know nothing about it. Great color scheme. I just know that from the hockey team, seeing like Paul Correa play and then more recent teams. I feel like University of Maine is a great place to go to college. I have no evidence on this. I just feel like Maine is an idyllic place.
It is.
And they have a great hockey team. I aspire to be a college hockey fan. I was a big college hockey fan growing up. I feel like it's cool. There's nothing going on around here. I've looked. There's an Army hockey team. It's an hour away from me. It's too far.
I gotta say, knowing the main hockey sweater color scheme is very Northeast coded of you.
It's black and light blue. It's like a classy Carolina Panthers.
That's interesting.
Or it's like navy blue and light blue. It looks
Winnipeg Jets energy to me there.
I'm going to have you look it up later after this, and you're going to agree with me, okay? I just want you to know that. And the viewers who are Northeast coded, they get it too. Brian Schottenheimer.
First off, Brian Schottenheimer's in the really weird position of knowing that him getting the job is a red flag. Like he knows that he shouldn't be getting this job. Like that has to be weird to know that your own hiring is a major red flag for the job and for the franchise, because
it's really I would not be a member of any club that would have me as a member. Yes, I would really not want to coach any team that would hire me to be a coach.
Yes, and you kind of got that where his whole press conference, the energy, like the whole press conference is him being like, you know what, I think I am pretty great. It's almost like he was having to convince himself.
We're gonna win championships here.
We're gonna win championships here. And okay, listen here. This to me is the thing that kind of really blows my mind with Brian Schottenheimer, where it's not that uncommon to have 20 years of NFL coaching experience before you get your first head coaching job. I'd say it's pretty uncommon to get your first coordinator job in 2006 and then not get your first head coaching job until 2025. So if you've been in the coordinator pipeline for 2 decades and still haven't gotten a head coaching job.
In a league where like the Browns had like 11 coaches in that time period. They were hiring Mike Pettin was a Browns coach. Pat Shurmur has been a coach multiple times.
Yes, no, not of my Rams. He was the offensive coordinator. But
how do you do? What an episode for former St. Louis Rams offensive coordinators.
He did so well. He got a job. He got what was the Browns job?
Which one did he get first? He went to the Vikings, then became the Giants coach. Yeah. What percentage of Giants fans have a single tangible memory of Pat Shurmur coaching their team?
He was good enough for the Rams that he got a job. I don't have a single tangible memory of him being the offensive coordinator.
He's actually a pretty nice guy. That's my take on him.
That stands.
Yeah. But you know who else is a nice guy? Brian Schottenheimer. Incredibly pleasant person.
Yeah.
Incredibly pleasant person.
That's just bad. That means he's going to get manipulated and controlled even easier than all the previous Cowboys head coach. That's why it's a red flag. He's too nice. This shouldn't be happening.
All right, I'm going to give a devil's advocate take. I obviously think this is the worst coaching hire of the cycle. I couldn't believe it when it happened. Also, the initial idea was Jason Witten was going to be a trainee. Jason Witten just not even joining the staff.
Jason Witten has commitment problems. Jason Witten was committed to one thing, being a Cowboys tight end. He did that for like 40 years, and then nothing else he can commit to.
He was the Raiders tight end as well. Remember that?
Oh, that's right. I forgot. That was his bald era. No offense to the bald. That was his bald era.
My only devil's advocate is that Mike McCarthy is a bad coach. And Mike McCarthy won a bunch of games with a healthy Cowboys team. I think that people would think this is going to be like a 4-13 disaster. I think that's incorrect.
That's what's frustrating about the Cowboys.
Yeah. I think they're going to go like 11-6.
I've made this point. Yeah, I feel like on several shows that the Cowboys have a high baseline. They actually somehow do a mostly good job running their front office and acquiring talent.
Because they have a really good roster and then they do nothing else.
They always have a good roster and they cannot do the finishing touches.
They're like if the Eagles did not do anything extra. Like Howie was in charge of the roster, and then it was like, well, what about like health and safety, or what, any of that stuff? Like what about sports science? And he'd be like, well, no. I gave you the roster. Hey, what if we hired a good offensive? Whoa. The roster. I gave you the roster. And like literally it's if the Eagles did no extra work outside of that.
That's an amazing take. Because the Cowboys, I feel like
everything else is a tiebreaker. Talent is all that matters in football. And then you have little tiebreakers, right? Like Sean McVay with an awful roster with the Patriots last year, 2024, wouldn't have done anything.
Nope.
He wouldn't have. He would have been better than Gerard Mayo, but he wouldn't have made the playoffs.
They'd go like 8 and 9 probably.
Did you see Belichick's take yesterday that Tom Brady should have the Super Bowl trophy named after him because it's all about the players?
Interesting.
That's Belichick's best take, and he's got a lot of them. Is it literally is all about the players? Coaching is a tiebreaker.
But not to get technical on old Bill, you know how hard it is to make a trophy famous. You can't change the name at this point.
Well, also, I mean, it's already named after somebody.
Yeah.
It's not like when people were like they should name DPOY after blank. Like,
Yeah.
It's the Lombardi.
How does football have a more famous championship trophy than baseball? By the way, baseball going on its 8th century.
Is the baseball trophy named for some random commissioner?
It's literally just called the Commissioner's Trophy. It's real bad. It's a problem.
There's a lot of people I don't know who they are. Who's Ford Frick?
He was a former president of the American League.
Yeah, there you go.
And commissioner. Then he was a commissioner.
I'm sure he was. Kennesaw Mountain Landis. Does he have any awards named after him?
I think he did. You should do a deep dive.
I think he may have gotten canceled, right?
He's been canceled He was canceled like when he was alive. The Kennesaw Mountain Landis wiki is a wild ride. You want a wild ride, by the way? I posted this the other day. Yeah. I have no idea why I was on this. If you want a wild 2 hours, try to make it through Mel Gibson's entire Wikipedia.
That's a great place to end it. I'm coming on your show next Wednesday, I think, a week from today.
It's going to be great. You agreed to the entire 2.5 hour block.
The whole 2.5. I'm losing my set. Mina and I are going to have the same set, and then Mina can only come in once because she does a lot more. She does a lot more than I do. I do nothing. And so she has that afternoon, and so I'm just going to come on for 2.5 hours. We're gonna stream.
We are.
We're gonna go on Twitch. We're gonna go live on Twitch.
We are. We'll be streaming.
All right. See you, buddy.
See you in New Orleans.